Liberal Viewer presents.
So, welcome to the November 27th edition of Liberal Viewer Monday Media Mix-Up. It's number 130. I think in the title I just had the number 1. It should be number 130. Thanks for joining me. I'll be using the 13 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all today. You can see from the video title, the main topic is President Joe Biden hostage deal success. This is actually looking more and more like a successful part of the Biden presidency, getting more and more hostages out. Breaking news since the Sunday morning news analysis shows is there's like a 2 day extension, or there's supposed to be a 2 day extension with 10 more hostages released each day for the next 2 days, and we'll see how that goes. And if you look down at the clip summaries, you'll see that on my main topic, I have three Republicans really trying to downplay Biden's success. I have Senator Tom Cotton, Representative Mike Turner, and Chris Christie. Down in the video description, you can see the summary of all 13 of the clips. And if you hang on until the end, not only will you see a Biden economic advisor reverse cross-examine the Fox News Sunday spin on the economy. That's Jared Bernstein, the chair of the U.S. Council of Economic Advisors, which is basically the Biden administration group of economic advisors. He's going to reverse cross-examine the Fox News Sunday spin on gas prices. And all the way at the end, for the first time since Dash and Sandy, I'm going to have some bonus kitty clips at the end from my weekend trip to a local animal shelter. But first, for my political comedy, I want to start with how former President Donald Trump, twice impeached, 91 felony indictments. How did he wish? How did Donald Trump wish us all a happy Thanksgiving? This is Eastern time where Trump was. It's like 2 in the morning on Thanksgiving Day, and you can see his Truth Social post here. I'll spare you reading the whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you because that would take way too long, but you can see he's basically going after everyone. He's going after like the court clerk in the civil fraud trial I mean, you can look at it. You can just pause briefly and read that if you really want to. But I mean, that's kind of a joke. He is like so much worse than he ever was. And actually, this was discussed over in the panel discussion on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Jonathan Karl was the guest host or permanent co-host or whatever his title is. And Susan Glasser, actually, I think, from the New Yorker, made a pretty good joke about Donald Trump and his Truth Social post that I'll talk about a little more after we watch it together over here.
Speaking of mental state, I assume you guys all saw the Thanksgiving message that Donald Trump put out. So he put out a post on Truth Social at 2:03 a.m. on Thanksgiving. That was this long screed against all the people that he hates, but he went specifically at the judge in the New York civil case and the clerk. The clerk who has faced a barrage of threats on her personal phone, threats, anti-Semitic threats. I mean, what do you make of that?
Donald Trump is seeking perhaps to taunt these judges to, not only have a gag order, but to seek some enforcement against himself. If his campaign is built on revenge and retribution, he wants to be ever more the victim. But the problem right now is that voters seem to have stopped processing just how out of control Donald Trump is. It's not just that he's prone to misstatements and gaffes that he taunts Joe Biden for, but to call him unhinged suggests that he was hinged. But, you know, this is really, it's a remarkable moment where he's rising in the polls, to Sarah's point, and yet here we are.
And this is as there are court proceedings.
To call him unhinged suggests that he was hinged. Good joke there from Susan Glasser, because that's true. You can't really call Trump unhinged, given that he was never all that hinged. But one thing I think maybe one of the aces in the hole that the Biden re-election campaign has is that the media hasn't really been focusing on Trump that much, not like they used to back during the Trump presidency. They've actually given him less coverage for quite a while, and people don't know that, like, this is Trump today, like a total, like, rant about, you know, going after all his enemies. This is, like, he's so much worse than he ever was. And the things he's proposing are even worse than 2016 through January 6, 2021 or whatever. But once the media actually starts focusing more on Trump as the Republican nominee, assuming that is who is going to be the Republican nominee, I think Trump is going to not do as well, because he's so much worse than he ever was, and this is just the latest example. Now, I'm going to show you the news summaries from longest to shortest, but all of these news summaries I'm showing you were like right before the day 3 of the 4-day hostage releases, and now we apparently have a 2-day extension. And so they don't know for sure if there's going to be any Americans released. And the only one that's different than that is this next one, ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where they like broke in to the California broadcast of the program and talked about the new hostage list of the people released Sunday morning, including this 4-year-old girl who's a dual American-Israeli citizen. And, you know, who would kidnap a 4-year-old girl? She actually, last Friday was her 4th birthday. She was a hostage for her 4th birthday, and I'm not going to show you that. I'm actually going to show you the news report from the ABC White House reporter talking to Jonathan Karl. Her name is Mary Alice Park, and she really sets up the way the Biden administration is trying to spin the hostage deal as a President Joe Biden success story, like in the title of my video here. And I mean, this is really the work of the Biden administration and Joe Biden specifically working out this deal and getting 50, 60, 70 of the hostages released. That's no small feat. That's worth something. And here's ABC's Mary Alice Park talking to the host of the show, Jonathan Karl, talking about the spin the Biden administration's trying to put on this deal over here.
But I want to go right now to the White House, where obviously President Biden and his national security team have been following this very closely. Mary Alice Park's there on the North Lawn. Mary Alice, what have you learned?
Yeah, John, no formal statement from the White House yet with this news. I wouldn't be surprised if the president came in front of the cameras today. He will want to talk about this. We know the White House has been making sure that everyone knows, the world knows, that he has been heavy-handed in this, personally involved on the phones. Yesterday on the phone with the Emir of Qatar, wanting to make sure that this was going forward. As you were just talking about with Matt, John, we know from the White House that they were hoping that 3 Americans in total, 2 women and 1 child, would be released as a part of this deal over the next few days. So still, obviously, there will be pressure for an additional American-Israeli dual citizen to be released. But no doubt this is huge news, wonderful news for the White House, for the world, and they will want to celebrate here. It was so interesting listening.
So there you saw ABC's Mary Alice Park basically giving you the spin that the Biden administration wants you to have, that this is a big success for the Biden administration. Although one phrase she used there, I don't think that word, she said that Biden has been heavy-handed. Heavy-handed. I don't think that word means, or those words mean what she thinks they mean, or maybe heavily involved, but heavy-handed doesn't really seem to fit in that report. Maybe that was just a mistake, but that was basically the spin that the Biden administration wants to put on this, and you'll see it represented in some of these news reports. The next news report, I have them from longest to shortest, and the longest one is actually the ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos news report, Jonathan Karl, and then you'll see their reporter, Matt Gutman, who is in Israel reporting. It's kind of interesting. They start with breaking news that the last surviving Koch brother the Koch money is going to go to try to support a non-Trump Republican presidential candidate. They don't say who. And it's kind of interesting. I'm not going to show you the clips later in the program where they actually discuss that, but they actually call him the surviving Koch brother. First they talk about the Koch brothers. The surviving Koch brother, because there's only one Koch brother left, but he's still referred to as a Koch brother. I guess they just branded themselves so well, and I'll talk about that or something about this clip a little more after we watch that longest of the news summaries together over here.
Good morning. Welcome to This Week. We have exclusive new reporting this week on an influential and well-funded conservative group backed by billionaire Charles Koch that ABC News has learned will soon endorse a Republican alternative to Donald Trump. Based on millions of dollars in research, the group is making the case that Trump can be defeated in the Republican primaries and plans to spend heavily to try to make that happen. We'll have a look at the numbers and the history as we ask whether another Republican can really beat Trump. But first, we begin with breaking news out of Israel. As we come on the air this morning, we are awaiting news of the release of more hostages taken by Hamas. Overnight, another 13 Israelis were released, 8 of them children, one just 3 years old, according to the Israeli Prime Minister's office. Separately, Hamas has released another 4 citizens of Thailand. We will have much more on the hostages who have been released and those who haven't, including the Americans still being held, when we talk to President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. But we begin with ABC's Matt Gutman in Tel Aviv with the latest on the hostages. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, good morning, John. We understand that at least 10 additional Israeli hostages, all women and children, plus people from other nationalities, are expected to be released in the coming hours as part of this third batch of hostage releases from Hamas, and multiple sources telling us this morning that Americans are expected to be on that list. Overnight, after a 7-hour delay, this late-night convoy bearing 17 hostages crossing out of Gaza and into safety. The second round of Hamas-held hostages included 13 Israelis and 4 Thai nationals, extending a tenuous ceasefire for at least another day. Among the Israelis, 8 minors, including 9-year-old Emily Hand, seen here escorted by gunmen to a Red Cross vehicle, Red Cross personnel welcoming them to freedom.
Welcome.
Late-night celebration in Israel, including this huge rally in Tel Aviv, demanding the release of all the hostages. In exchange, Israel releasing another 39 Palestinian prisoners from its jails, women and teenage boys into the West Bank. There, thousands waited to greet them near Ramallah, welcomed as heroes with fireworks and confetti. The ceasefire affording Gazans the opportunity to survey the apocalyptic destruction in northern Gaza and to scramble to gather desperately needed food, water, and supplies before the ceasefire ends. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza reporting the death toll nearing 15,000, majority of them women and children. But Saturday's release nearly fell through, jeopardizing even that short respite. Hamas leadership alleging that Israel violated the ceasefire agreement by opening fire on Gazans trying to return to the north and by allowing too few aid trucks into Gaza, Israel refuting Hamas's claim. The UN reporting 133 aid trucks went in instead of 200. Hours into the standoff, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu convening his war cabinet, but Egyptian, Qatari, and U.S. mediators breaking the impasse. Additional aid sent in, and the Red Cross vehicles finally rolled out through the Rafah border to Egypt and onward to Israel. The first round of hostages Friday greeted in Israel with jubilation.
It was just a short time ago that the hundreds of people here received the news that the hostages are with the Red Cross, that they are safe, and this spontaneous singing broke out.
There were also tears, and ahead of additional releases, uncertainty.
What is it like not knowing if she's going to be part of one of these deals? She's 75 years old.
It's nerve-wracking. We don't know what will happen next. Everything is the trust level is so low.
And John, so far today, the ceasefire is holding for that third day. Now, this ceasefire/hostage exchange was designed to last for 4 days. Israel has said that for each additional 10 hostages that Hamas releases, that'll buy the organization 24 more hours of ceasefire. But Israel has made very clear in the past couple of days that once the ceasefire ends, it will resume its war against Hamas with the aim of destroying the organization. John.
Our thanks to Matt Gutman. We are joined now by White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
And I actually don't have any clips of Jake Sullivan. He was on multiple shows, but didn't say anything quite taking the credit for the Biden administration for the hostage deal. I mean, he did say some things, and but didn't fit into my clip list for some reason. And I think you saw a pretty good coverage, some pretty good coverage of the hostage deal there. You saw the teenagers released from Palestinian or Palestinian teenagers released from Israeli prisons, showing up in the West Bank and treated as heroes in Ramallah. And that's one of the things about this prisoner release is there's not... you see a lot more coverage of the individual hostages taken by Hamas who are released than the individual prisoners from Israel's prisons. I mean, it wouldn't be quite accurate to call them hostages. They usually have some due process, but I'm not saying that I am, as a former public defender, someone who is an advocate of civil liberties and free speech rights and right to protest. I'm not sure that I am all in on the amount of due process that a lot of Palestinians in Israeli prisons get, especially from the West Bank. And there are women and minors, including those Palestinian teenagers who you saw being celebrated as heroes on the West Bank. I don't know if there are any like 4-year-olds or 9-10-month-olds like Hamas took as hostages with no one can argue any due process or any finding of any sort of violation of anything, however little due process you might think Israel gives to the people it puts, the Palestinians it puts in its prisons. I don't think you can really equate that to taking a 9-month-old baby or a 3-year-old child as a hostage in a raid across the border. That's from what I understand, Hamas has gotten criticism in the Arab world, and that's one of the reasons that they were pretty easy to convince to let the women and children go, because it's even getting criticism from people who would be allies of the Palestinians, that they kind of went too far on October 7th in that regard, from even the most pro-Palestinian point of view. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty good ABC news summary. I'm going off on a big tangent here, kind of based on some of the things I saw in the live comments while that was playing. But I do want to show the next news summary that I also think is really good. Maybe even better at showing the Palestinian point of view. And CBS News Face the Nation has been like winning this category every week for several weeks. They have their reporter in the West Bank this week, Imtiaz Tayyib, or I mispronounce his name every week, and I apologize for that. And they also have Marwan Al Ghul from South Gaza, giving a probably the best perspective on, or the best look at the Palestinian perspective on what's going on. Although what ABC did in that last report was also pretty good. But anyway, I'll talk about that a little more after we watch the CBS report together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. It is day 3 of the brief pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas, and a third group of hostages is expected to be released today by Hamas in exchange for Israel releasing Palestinian prisoners and allowing in humanitarian aid to Gaza. Hamas has given the list of 13 hostages to Israel for review, and multiple sources tell CBS News that an American name is on that list. The truce, negotiated by Qatar and the U.S., is expected to last for at least 4 days, and it's unclear at this hour what will happen this week on day 5. We'll have an exclusive interview with the Prime Minister of Qatar in a moment. First, here's the latest from Imtiaz Tayyib in the West Bank.
After 7 weeks in captivity, freedom for a second group of hostages, including 9-year-old Irish-Israeli Emily Hand, who was initially presumed dead, now in her father's arms. Just one of many overjoyed reunions. In all, 13 Israelis, 6 women and 7 children, and 4 Thai nationals were released last night. And 39 Palestinian prisoners, 6 women and 33 children, including these teenage boys who were given a hero's welcome in the occupied West Bank. Since the start of the agreement, a total of 41 hostages have been released and 78 Palestinian prisoners. But there were fears on Saturday the fragile deal between Israel and Hamas was close to collapse after it was delayed for hours when Hamas accused the Israeli military of repeatedly violating the terms of the agreement, forcing Egyptian and Qatari mediators to intervene. While in Gaza, the pause in violence allowed war-weary Palestinians to return to their homes in the north of the Strip, only to find entire city blocks gutted by airstrikes. Hamas leaders said Israeli forces had been preventing aid trucks from entering the area, a stark reminder of how brittle the truce agreement is, as Israel continues to vow it will resume its campaign to destroy Hamas after the pause. Despite the growing international pressure for a longer break in the bombardment that has so far killed almost 15,000 Palestinians, according to the Hamas-run Palestinian Ministry of Health, and has displaced over 1 million more, many of whom have fled to the relative safety of the south of Gaza, where CBS News producer Marwan Al Ghul reports.
The feelings of the people here in the south, actually it's mixed, because they could see each other's, and very sad too. They heard that they lost their houses, they lost everything.
There is still some optimism that the 4-day break in hostilities could be extended after Israel offered to prolong the ceasefire by an extra day for every 10 more hostages released.
And Israel has already received the names of the next 13 hostages that are due to be released. And Hamas has been alerted of the names of the 39 other Palestinian prisoners. While in Gaza, for the first time since the war began, a Qatari delegation has entered the Palestinian territory, Margaret, the first foreign diplomats to do so.
Imtiaz Tayyib reporting from the West Bank. We're joined now by the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani. It is his first.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to have a clip of that interview. That is kind of a rare interview. The Prime Minister / Foreign Minister of Qatar. And I've always kind of wondered how to pronounce the name of that country. A lot of people say like Gutter, some people say Qatar, some people say Gutter, but I listened to him actually pronounce the name of his own country, and it actually kind of sounds like Qatar, Qatar, almost like Welcome Back Kotter for people who are as old as I am and can remember that like sitcom from the 70s, Welcome Back Kotter. It's not quite Cotter, but Kotter. And I'll have a clip from his interview that's kind of important as to where the extension of this ceasefire and hostage release deal, where it's going to end. And that's basically when they run out of women and children hostages to release. Spoiler alert when I get to that clip. That'll be clip number 8 right after the news summaries. But I want to continue with the news summaries. The next one is CNN State of the Union. Dana Bash also starts the, what is the State of the Union this week, and then talks to Jeremy Diamond in Kerem Shalom, which is a kibbutz like right in the southern tip of Israel, like right where Gaza, Israel, and Egypt all meet, where there's been some transfer of people and stuff, and I'll talk about that a little more after we watch it together over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the State of our Union is watching families reunite and thinking about those still waiting. We begin this morning with breaking news. Hamas is set to release more Israeli hostages from Gaza, including, we are learning, an American citizen. This is the third day of a 4-day pause in fighting. Israeli leaders have a list of the people who are expected to come home today after weeks in Hamas captivity. 41 hostages, 26 of them Israeli, are already home now. And this morning, the Israeli Prime Minister's office said they believe 201 hostages still remain in Gaza. We saw 9-year-old Emily Hand run into her father's arms. He was originally told that Emily was dead before learning she was a hostage. So this moment of pure joy was once unimaginable for him. For others, the reunions are bittersweet. The Or children were released Saturday. Their mother was murdered on October 7th, and their father is still being held by Hamas. The question now, whether this fragile truce could hold longer than 4 days, allowing more aid into Gaza and more hostages to come home. CNN's Jeremy Diamond is live in Kerem Shalom. Jeremy, what's the latest?
Well, Dana, for now, Israeli officials are preparing for the third round of hostages to be released by Hamas into the arms of the Red Cross and then eventually crossing into Israel. We have watched over the last 2 days as 26 Israeli civilian hostages as well as 15 foreign nationals crossed via this Kerem Shalom crossing, which is right behind me here. But even though those 2 releases showed the promise of this deal with Hamas, yesterday we also saw its fragility as there were multiple issues that led to delays, hours-long delays, in those hostages ultimately being released. Hamas claiming that Israel was not allowing sufficient aid into Gaza, but I'm also learning now of another major behind-the-scenes struggle. Israeli officials pushed to try and include the mother of 13-year-old Hila Rotem, who was released as part of the 13 Israeli hostages yesterday, but who wasn't released was her mother. And that is not in keeping with what we've seen in recent days, where mothers and children who were taken hostage together have been released together. I'm told that Israeli officials fought hard behind the scenes yesterday to try and get the mother included. But at this point, her condition, her whereabouts are simply not known. But now, Dana, we are looking at next steps, not only trying to sort out whether today's release will go forward, if everything will go smoothly, or if we will have bumps in the road like yesterday, but also looking forward. We are on day 3 now. Tomorrow will be day 4, which is the last official day of this 50 Israeli hostages deal in exchange for 150 Palestinian prisoners. But there is an option to extend 10 additional hostages per day, earn an additional day of truce, and 30 more Palestinian prisoners. So now officials will turn to that issue as well to see if this truce can be extended. Dana?
Jeremy, thank you so much for that reporting. Here with me now is White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, I won't have a clip of Jake Sullivan, but you saw there, Jeremy Diamond, mentioned that there was Palestinian prisoners who were part of the extended deal, or that it would be 10 hostages for 30 Palestinian prisoners if there was going to be an extension. And apparently there is going to be an extension for at least 2 more days, assuming everything goes as planned for the next 2 days. But there will be more hostages and more Palestinian prisoners released. And I thought that was also a good news report, and it included that important informational nugget there that I'll talk about a little more when I get to the Prime Minister / Foreign Minister of Qatar. But I want to show the last 2 news summaries first. Well, this next one isn't really a news summary because it's Fox News, which, as we all know, is not really a journalistic outlet. It's a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party. That's actually Roger Ailes created Fox News to be a propaganda outlet for the Republican Party, as you can find out by reading this book over here, The Loudest Voice in the Room by Gabriel Sherman. That's what that book's about. And of course, I came up with hundreds of examples of Fox News bias just to prove that they are all about the partisan political spin and not about reporting the news. And I think one of the ways you can know that's true is watching this news summary from Fox News Sunday, but I've recorded like the replay at 11 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday. That's like 2 a.m. Monday morning Eastern time. Fox News never updated anything. Remember earlier I showed how like ABC broke into the broadcast of ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos here in California just to update that there was another hostage release and it included Americans, but you'll see they're like still attacking Biden for not having any Americans released, and that is backed up by the Tom Cotton clip I'll show a little later in clip 9, but this is clip 6. Fox News Sunday news summary, Shannon Bream, Trey Yingst, but all the way at 11 p.m. Pacific time with no updates to show that Biden did get an American release that I'll talk about a little more after we watch that news summary together over here.
Hello from Fox News in Washington. Hamas had agreed to release another group of hostages today. We're standing by. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the White House has, quote, reason to believe at least 1 of 3 Americans held will be among them. We are currently in day 3 of a 4-day pause in fighting. After delay on Saturday, the hostage for prisoners deal between Hamas and Israel did get back on track. Hamas promised to release a total of at least 50 Israeli hostages, while Israel says it will release 150 Palestinian prisoners. President Biden is vowing to keep pressing for the release of all American hostages. We're going to bring in lawmakers from both sides of the aisle to discuss what comes next in the Israel-Hamas war. But we begin with Trey Yingst, who is live at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv, Israel. Hello, Trey.
Hey, Shannon, good morning. Overnight for a second straight evening, Israelis breathing a sigh of relief. 13 hostages released as part of a broader ceasefire deal. It was not, though, without anticipation and uncertainty. The agreement nearly collapsing right before the transfer was set to take place. Qatari officials telling Fox News they were able to negotiate a path forward that ultimately had the hostages taken by the Red Cross to Egypt's Rafah crossing, where they were met by Israeli intelligence officers and then brought here to Israel. Hamas told Fox News the delay was over a disagreement on aid trucks. Israel had threatened to resume their bombing campaign if Hamas backed out of the deal. Now, out of the group last night, 12 were taken to the Sheba Medical Center in central Israel and 1 to the Soroka Hospital. 21-year-old Maya Regev was in more immediate need of medical attention after being shot 50 days ago. The videos of families returning and reuniting, giving Israel hope and bringing the total to 26 hostages released as part of this ceasefire deal. Another group is expected to be freed tonight. And remember, they are being exchanged at a 3-to-1 ratio. 39 Palestinian prisoners were released on Saturday evening. The question, though, today, Shannon, is whether or not the fighting will resume. Regional sources telling Fox News today they believe there could be a possible extension to this ceasefire deal, but the days ahead will tell. Shannon.
Trey Yingst reporting from Israel. Trey, we thank you and your team again. We're joined now by Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton, member of the Armed Services Committee. Great to have you back on Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Shannon. Good to be back with you.
And I held that for just a minute so you could see I don't just have a DVR, I actually have a TiVo, an actual TiVo that I recorded that on, and I put up the TiVo info so you could see that that actually aired at 11 p.m. Pacific time on the Fox News channel, but no updates about how there actually was an American released. And you'll see that a clip of that Tom Cotton interview. I'm going to show you in a little bit, clip 9. There's a whole clip list down in the video description, and that's clip 9, where Tom Cotton talks about how the lack of released Americans is just proof of how weak the Biden administration is seen in the Middle East, and that's maybe why they didn't update. They refused to update their news summary to include the fact that there was an American released by the time that played on the Fox News channel. But before I get to the newsmaker clips, including Tom Cotton and the Prime Minister / Foreign Minister of Qatar, I want to show you the last news summary. The NBC News Meet the Press just has Kristen Welker explaining stuff. No reporter from anywhere in Israel or Gaza or the West Bank like all the other news summaries. I don't know why, but I guess that's one demerit for Meet the Press this week. And I think other weeks it was more than one program had given up their reporters, but this week it's just Meet the Press, and with the shortest news summary that I'll talk about a little more after we watch it together over here.
Good Sunday morning. It took weeks of excruciating secret negotiations involving U.S., Israeli, Qatari, and Egyptian officials, and personal pressure from President Biden to persuade a reluctant Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to accept a 4-day ceasefire that has so far freed 26 Israeli hostages from Hamas. This morning, 2 senior administration officials tell NBC News the Biden administration is disappointed Americans have not yet been released, but say they are hopeful 3 Americans will still be among the 50 civilian women and children freed as a part of this deal.
We also remember all those who are still being held and renew our commitment to work for their release as well. 2 American women and 1 4-year-old child, Abigail, who remains among those missing. We also will not stop until we get these hostages brought home.
After a short but serious delay on Saturday, 13 more Israelis, 5 women and 8 children were freed. In return, Israel released 39 more Palestinians from its prisons, and aid organizations have been able to scale up fuel and aid deliveries for Gaza. Pressure on Israel continues to mount. Tens of thousands gathered in Tel Aviv Saturday night, accusing Netanyahu of not doing enough to bring the 240 hostages home. The deal also comes as Democrats are increasingly divided over President Biden's embrace of Israel as the civilian death toll in Gaza grows. A Biden administration official says this deal was a Biden deal, not a Netanyahu deal.
I don't know how to feel right now because it's a weird situation, but I'm happy and excited.
We saw the Jeep passing by and we recognized Adina, my aunt, in the Jeep, and then we started shouting.
I don't know that there will be words. I think it will be a lot of tears. A lot of happy tears, I hope.
We want this chapter to be completed so we can, lick our wounds and start to recuperate as a family.
And joining me now is National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
And like I said, no Jake Sullivan clips today, but That was kind of interesting. I noticed having, I watch all these clips like 3 times. First, I watched them when I watched the shows the first time. Then I watched the clips again when I capture them. And then the third time, I watch them with you, my live viewers, as I'm broadcasting the live stream. And the one thing I noticed in that clip that I hadn't noticed before is how at the very end there, here I can find it over in the transcript here, Meet the Press. If I can get at the beginning here, that, wait, no, where is it? That they talked about all 3 of the Americans who, oh wait, I'm missing the part. Let's see, disappointed. They talked about the 4-year-old child. Oh, do I even have the right? Oh, yeah. Kristen Welker. They talked about the divide. Oh, they in the Democratic Party. I'm sorry, it took me a while to find what it was that I was trying to give approval to NBC News, Meet the Press, and Kristen Welker for saying, but it's a Biden administration official says this deal was a Biden deal, not a Netanyahu deal. And that kind of supports the title of my video, that this is a Biden hostage deal success, that this isn't something the Netanyahu government would do itself if Biden hadn't put a lot of time and effort into creating this now possibly 6-day ceasefire and the release of all these hostages. So sorry for that delay, but I had to look and I forgot the point I was trying to make, and then I found it. It was the Biden deal, not Netanyahu deal. And making that point here, or one of the limits of this deal, I think, is the number of women and children who are hostages. And at the far side of that, I actually saw a report just in the last couple of hours from NBC talking about how like 70 of the hostages are Israeli soldiers, and they're going to be like the final group to be released for, who knows, like Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, or who knows what they're going to be looking for those last 70 hostages who are Israeli soldiers. But in terms of the limit of the deal extension that is going, there are a couple days of an extension that Biden can rightly tout as a success for his hostage deal here. But the limit of that success, I think, is what you can see here from the Prime Minister / Foreign Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani Mohammed. You can see here Margaret Brennan on CBS asking him if the hostage deal might be extended, and he makes it pretty clear that it can only be extended to the extent that Hamas can find women and children to release. And I'll talk about that a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, I understand a Qatari delegation visited Israel yesterday and Gaza today. Do you expect that this 4-day truce will be extended? And if so, for how long?
Well, actually, we are hopeful. According to the agreement that being agreed upon in the last few days for this 4 days pause, the agreement has a provision that if Hamas will be able to prove to locate and secure some of the hostages that are within the criteria of the first group, which is women and children, then it will be extended. Depends on the number that they will have. This is something we cannot confirm yet until we get to the 4th day. Then Hamas should present the list if they are available with them. Our delegation who have reached to Israel and to Gaza, they are totally two separate delegations. Gaza delegation is focused on ensuring that humanitarian aid are sufficient, that they are going, the humanitarian aid that's going in Gaza, and it's a pure humanitarian mission.
So yeah, there is the Prime Minister / Foreign Minister of Qatar, basically giving a limit to how far this ceasefire / hostage release / Palestinian prisoner release can go on, and it's basically as long as there are women and children still to be released. But once they get past that, they're going to be looking for something more, and when they get to the last 70 prisoners who are Israeli soldiers, that is going to be probably a much bigger ask than what's going on right now. But the next 3 clips I want to show you are 3 different Republicans trying to denigrate the actually significant and important work that the Biden administration did to get this deal going, where it looks like 50, 60, 70. I mean, that's a lot. I mean, every person released is one less person who is a hostage. And even if you're looking at it from the other side, there are like 3 times as many Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails being released in exchange for those hostages. So it's like all good, whatever side you're on. And it's something that Biden has been working on, so probably gets some credit for, and that is something that one of the most right-wing senators, Senator Tom Cotton, is definitely not going to agree upon, and spends a lot of time saying that the reason no Americans have been released is because Biden is weak. And he also creates this whole bogus story about how Reagan was such a strong Republican that Iran released the hostages from the Carter administration, which is really a bogus take on the whole thing that Shannon Bream did nothing to follow up on Fox News Sunday. And I'll talk about all of that a little more after we watch that Fox News Sunday newsmaker clip together over here.
With this pause, because there are folks who don't think it's been the best idea. Wall Street Journal, an opinion piece over there, says a ceasefire deprives Israel of military momentum and transfers the initiative to Hamas. Now that Israel has agreed to a short ceasefire, the Biden administration and its Qatari interlocutors will expect longer ceasefires. Hamas will remain armed and dangerous in Gaza and will use this ceasefire to regroup. But we have gotten dozens of hostages out. What do you make of it? Where do we go from here?
Well, I don't want to second guess the Israeli government. They had near unanimous support across many different political parties and in their senior security leadership that this was the appropriate step to take. So I'm not going to second guess the Israeli government. But I have to say, it seems like President Biden puts more pressure on Israel than he does on Hamas and its hosts in Qatar. Part of the reasons why we got to this point where we had to have a 4-day pause is the Biden administration has consistently behind the scenes insisted that Israel's government take steps that are clearly not in Israel's interest. For instance, providing fuel into Gaza, not just water or food or medicine, but fuel, which may as well be providing them with ammunition. I'm also very frustrated that we have not seen the release of a single American hostage. Perhaps there'll be one today, but apparently Hamas is so contemptuous of President Biden and American power that they feel the imperative to release Filipinos and Thai hostages before they release American hostages. That's just one small example of the weakness that President Biden has projected around the world that has resulted in things like Americans being taken hostage or Iran attacking Americans more than 70 times now since or over the last month or the fall of Kabul in 2021.
So to the point about Americans still being held there, Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips, by the way, mounting a run against President Biden in the primary lane with Democrats. He says he thinks we should be using U.S. forces on the ground potentially to get those Americans out. Here's what he says.
By now, I would have expected American special forces to perhaps play a hand in extracting them. I think it's absurd, shocking, and dismaying that 6 weeks later we still have American hostages held by a terror organization in Gaza. I'm happy for the Israelis, don't get me wrong. Hamas should release all hostages. But the fact that we have Americans sitting in Gaza right now held hostage is appalling and should be addressed immediately.
You have served in uniform overseas. What do you make about this call for using U.S. Special Forces to get our folks out?
Well, we should certainly be open to that. I mean, we have elite special operations forces who are specifically trained in hostage rescue. I do think we have to be deferential to the Israeli government and the Israeli Defense Forces about the tactical situation on the ground. But if American military forces are called upon and can provide a viable solution to get out American citizens and the citizens of Israel or other nations, then we have to be open to that. But again, it's not just those small special operations units that we have trained. We have 2 aircraft carriers in the region. We've increased the number of troops and aircraft we have in the region. Yet Hamas is still so contemptuous of President Biden that it hasn't yet released American hostages. This would have never happened under Donald Trump or Ronald Reagan. In fact, if you recall, Jimmy Carter had a hostage crisis with Iran, Hamas's patron, for over 400 days. Iran released those hostages the day Ronald Reagan took office because they were so scared of what Ronald Reagan might do to them. You don't see that kind of fear of President Biden from Hamas or Iran or, frankly, anyone around the world.
But you talk about our assets in the region. We talk about our troops in uniform in the region. How worried are you about that expanding into something broader that
So, of course, Shannon Bream did nothing to follow up on that claim at the end there from Senator Tom Cotton that the hostage crisis during the Carter administration was resolved because Iran was so scared of Ronald Reagan? Well, there's been a lot of reporting that Iran actually released the hostages in the interregnum between the 2 administrations, so no one would get credit. But there's also been recent reporting that Ronald Reagan and his campaign delayed the release of the hostages till after the election. They had contacts with Iran to try to stop the hostages from being released. Here, for the live viewers, I just put a link there. Reagan campaign delayed hostage release. That's a Rolling Stone article, but there's a lot of reporting that what Tom Cotton said there is totally bogus, but apparently Shannon Bream is never going to follow up on anything like that. No cross-examination of Tom Cotton. And also, that was something that Fox News Sunday played well after Americans had actually been, well, at least that 4-year-old girl who was a dual American-Israeli citizen had been released for many hours, even though Fox News, the Fox News channel played that Fox News Sunday clip from Tom Cotton saying that it's Biden weakness. That's why they're not releasing any Americans. But anyway, I'm going to now move on to other two Republicans. The next one is Representative Mike Turner, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, also trying to claim that Biden isn't being strong enough, not quite as badly as Tom Cotton there, but I'll talk about that clip a little more after we watch it together from NBC News. Right? Yeah. NBC News, Meet the Press, Kristen Welker asking Representative Mike Turner, as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, what we know about those remaining American hostages and whether the Biden administration deserves credit for a successful hostage deal over in this clip.
So let's start with what we know about this release of hostages. In addition to the 3 that the White House has said they anticipate will be released, there are still 7 other Americans who are unaccounted for. Is it your expectation that those 7 Americans, based on the intelligence that you have, are still being held hostage? Do you know if they're alive?
Right. Well, you know, it's been very curious that the administration is so quick to claim this as a Biden deal. And as you just heard from Jake Sullivan, he continues to say we know every detail, but then he can't answer your questions as to those details. You know, our expectation is there are 10 Americans that are being held out of the 240 hostages that are people who are missing. No one really knows the number. Jake Sullivan was saying that he doesn't even know the number, nor do we know the proof of life. And you would have thought if they're claiming credit, this is a Biden deal, that those are details that we would have conditioned this process through, because the aid that's going into northern Gaza, that's a condition that Hamas required, includes American aid. So, you know, obviously, I think everyone's very concerned. But one thing I think it's also important here is to understand that the word hostage barely describes what these people have been through. I mean, these are not detainees. These people were not in Gaza. They were in their homes in Israel. They witnessed the brutal murdering of their families, neighbors, and friends, and then were kidnapped from their homes into Gaza and have been held in brutal conditions. And as we know, some of the hostages have been killed. So I'm certain these hostages, these individuals that have been kidnapped and being released, went through a very brutal time.
I want to ask you more about the intelligence that you have, but to your point about whether this is a Biden deal, you heard Mr. Sullivan just say to me that the details are very sensitive. Does the president deserve some credit, given that he has been working on the phones with the leader of Qatar, Egypt, Israel, to try to get this temporary pause in the fighting?
Right. I think people would expect nothing less. And certainly it appears that the administration has stepped up for that.
So do you give him some credit?
Absolutely. I think what's curious, though, is that this is a period that's fraught with peril. For them to be so quick to claim credit for a deal that we don't know what's going to come out of this. I just think it's very dangerous.
Speaking of the perils here, do you have any concerns that Hamas is delaying the release of American citizens to use them effectively as bargaining chips, Congressman?
Exactly, which is why I'm concerned that the Biden administration didn't make it a condition of this deal that Americans be in the first hostages that are released, especially since American aid is going into Gaza right now, into northern Gaza, as part of the conditions that Hamas had. I think you know, when the administration says they know every detail and then tell you that they don't even know if they're alive, that is certainly concerning. Also, the aspect, as you raised in the interview, is the Red Cross is supposed to be having access now to the remaining hostages. So we're supposed to be getting information as to what their condition is, who is being held, because the hostage lists today are based on people who are missing.
And Jake said that he expects that ultimately that will happen potentially by tomorrow. Why is that so critical? And do you anticipate it will happen by tomorrow? Are you getting any information that points to that?
Well, I think it's very, this is a war zone. And so it's very, unknowns are rampant. And the other aspect here is that we're not even sure that Hamas has all of the hostages. There are other radical groups within Gaza that might have possession of some of these hostages. We're not sure which ones are alive, where their bodies may be in either Gaza or where Hamas has held them. How will the Red Cross be able to tell us who's alive and who's not. And that is part of certainly the terrible distress that these families go through. People who've been told that their relatives are deceased are now finding they're alive. People who believe they're alive may find out tragic news.
I want to ask you big picture about how Israel is conducting this war.
So, yeah, there you see Senator Tom Cotton, then from the Senate, and then Representative Mike Turner from the House Intelligence Committee trying to denigrate the Biden administration credit for this hostage deal, like not enough Americans, we don't know where they are, they're not telling us everything they know, which of course would be really stupid in the middle of a hostage negotiation to like talk about what's going on in the secret talks, let us know. No, that's not how secret diplomatic talks work. And then the final Republican trying to denigrate Biden's credit is Chris Christie, who was just talking about how, Biden's putting too much pressure on the Israelis, which is sort of the light version of what you heard from Senator Tom Cotton over in this clip.
Do you believe President Biden deserves credit for pushing through the deal that has at least brought some of the hostages back to their families?
Look, I think that anytime there's return of hostages, that's incredibly helpful, and President Biden and his administration has played a role in it, so they deserve credit. But also, the terms of this release are really lopsided towards Hamas, as you know, 3-1 in terms of hostage release, and this pause that's going on as well. So, look, I think everyone can always second-guess the negotiation from the outside because you're not in the middle of it. What I'm grateful for is that these hostages have been returned to their families. That's extraordinarily important and humane to have that done. So I think President Biden deserves credit for that. Where I think he's starting to err into an area where I think is wrong is to say he hopes that this continues, that the truce continues. He can't be doing that kind of stuff, in my view, publicly. His voice has to be just purely supportive of what Israel is doing to try to protect its territorial integrity and the safety and security of its 9 million citizens. That's got to be priority number one for the United States, and everyone in the Middle East has to know that that's America's number one priority.
Governor, I want to ask about the spike in hate against Jews.
So, yeah, that was the final Republican trying to give Biden some credit, but not too much credit for getting all these hostages released, and also a pause in the bombing in Gaza for 4 days. Now looks like 6 days. So whatever side you're on of the conflict, whether you want to get hostages released or you want to stop the bombing of Palestinians, or you want Palestinian prisoners released, all those things are happening, and Biden gets credit. But that's the final clip on my main topic. I do have the things I promised at the very end here. First, I want to show the Biden economic advisor, Jared Bernstein, doing the reverse cross-examination of Fox News. And it starts, this is a 10-second clip from Lucas Tomlinson talking about gas prices on Fox News Sunday over
Ahead
here.
of Thanksgiving, Biden tweeted that gas prices are down $1.70 from their peak. But today, gas prices remain 37% higher than the day he took office. Home sales are now...
So yeah, you saw there that Lucas Tomlinson was talking about Biden claiming gas prices were down, but then he showed this screenshot, this slide of high gas prices at this gas station here, and Jared Bernstein was on Fox News Sunday talking to Shannon Bream and did this reverse cross-examination of this slide you're seeing right here, and you can see it over here.
The question needs to be, in regard to all these polls you just cited, are we moving in a direction that will reach the American people, give them more buying power, continues to see actual declines in gas prices? By the way, you put up a slide there, $3.79 for gas prices. That is a stale picture, Shannon.
Okay.
The average gas price is $3.25.
Yes. Well, listen, I need to find that. You know, around here in D.C., we're not going to find that. But hopefully out in the country, people are doing a little bit better.
What, Fox News can't find a gas station outside of the DC area? That's bogus. And kudos to Jared Bernstein for cross-examining Fox News Sunday, where he was the guest. But finally, the last clips I want to show here are my forays into getting new pet clips to show you. This is the first pet clips I'm going to show you since Dash and Sandy. This is some animal shelters I visited over the weekend to get some new pets. First, this is a clip of a cat called Freya that we saw at Happy Tails. Look at this.
13, almost 13. For like 10 years or more. Yeah.
And so, yeah, that is one of the cats we looked at, and then another cat here. This is Harvey.
Yeah. No.
And they were both good candidates for adoption, although that particular shelter, they said we couldn't let our cats go outside. And for my longtime viewers, you know that we used to let Dash go outside, and I don't know if that is like a deal breaker, but anyway, those are a couple of the cats that we're looking to possibly adopt, but I'll have another update next Monday, and every Monday all the way through January 2025, I'll be doing my Monday Media Mix-Up. I appreciate all of you who joined me for the live show. I appreciate my recorded show viewers, and I hope you appreciate the time and effort I put into creating this program, picking out the clips, adding my media criticism and political commentary. Until next Monday, or until I have some other reason to upload a clip or video, I hope you will keep checking out my channel, and until next Monday or some other video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around.